Hello and welcome to New Consciousness Activation. Today I welcome Susan to our conversation. And Susan, you are an intuitive relationship and marriage coach, right? And your company is Conscious Soulmate.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So would you like to add a little bit more just to fill in the gaps in your introduction?
Absolutely. Well, I'm Susan Ortolano, and I have been helping singles and couples, married folks, people in relationships, people going through divorce, healing from divorce for about 11 years now. I also do clairvoyant readings. And I do add a little intuition into the work that I do. And I absolutely love it. It really touches my heart to see couples thrive, to see individuals thrive, especially those who have been through betrayal in the past. That's a real big stickler for so many people. You know, they've been cheated on, or financial betrayal, or something where they landed in divorce, or they're together as a couple, they don't know how to rebuild. You know, there's so much of that out there now.
Absolutely, and I definitely want to talk to you about it. But I want to start from your title and from your company name, because I love Conscious Soulmates. And I'd like to ask you first to define how you see what is a soulmate in your definition.
It's a great question. For me, it is a mate that aligns with you at a soul level. So, you know, it's like people get together for so many different reasons. A lot of them are surface or superficial, and they don't take the deep dive to really find out who somebody is at a soul level, or a much deeper, more intimate, more sacred level. So my work is really about helping people go there, so to speak, really dive deep into who they are. You know, some people might say, oh, the meaning of life and, you know, philosophy and all that kind of stuff. But I think the best marriages are spiritual partnerships, and partnerships where they learn and grow and evolve together personally. They are able to heal some of the wounds from their past by being together. And they really bond in a much deeper way than just having a house and a picket fence and 2.5 kids. And, you know, it's a lot. Marriage for me is a lot deeper than that. And that's why I use the word soulmate, and I use it as two words rather than one word, because I don't believe that there's just one person for everybody.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. There used to be a belief that, you know, soulmate is once you find that, you know, prince or princess charming, whatever, that's, you know, your fairy tale, but that's really not the case. So what's your perspective on that?
You know, my perspective is that we have soul contracts, and soul contracts, from my perspective, is we came into this, we'll say, human experience to connect with a variety of different people for a variety of different reasons. And sometimes a soul contract means you're going to get married to somebody and share that type of experience together. It may or may not work out, but it's an experience that needed to be had to fulfill that lesson, that soul contract. And, you know, the idea that there's one person out there, and if you blow it at 35, you're, you know, forget it. It's like, I don't believe that that's accurate. I believe that we have a few people that could step into what I call our soulmate suit, which is really our vision for ideal partnership. Somebody's going to try the suit on. It may be too tight. It may be too big. It may fit just right. But I think there are a few people, depending on where we are in consciousness, that could be a fit for us.
And I also know that at a soul level, we kind of operate in soul groups. And so within a soul group, there are several entities that can step in, and you can have a contract with multiple, you know, entities to have that deep connection. So it's not sort of like one human per one human, but it's multiple soul entities that can join with you. So, and that makes me feel hopeful, because, you know, if one thing doesn't work out, there are other opportunities. Hopefully it makes our viewers feel hopeful too.
And I want people to understand that it's all very possible. And for people who have lost a spouse or have gotten divorced, or had an engagement that didn't work out, I just want to say, do not stop, your dream. This is your dream to have, a life partner or a marriage. Don't give up, because there's still somebody out there. It's really a matter of doing the internal consciousness work to come together with that person.
Right, absolutely. And so let's go back to the somewhat painful things, the divorce, the cheating, when things don't work out, or they don't work out in a sad way, like it's not sort of a mutual decision to part. So our conversations here are about consciousness activation as we are taking steps in the direction of our own evolution. We are changing our own behaviors, our own perceptions. And so part of that is us becoming more, us accepting more responsibility for our creations, for our reality. And so from that perspective, people are beginning to say, okay, I went through divorce, I accept responsibility for it, but not in a sense that I necessarily did something wrong. It's just that I co-created it. I was a participant in its creation, and didn't just fell on me.
Right.
So from that perspective, how do you help your clients, and how do you work with them, to process it and to live through it and then move forward?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because I know so many people are in pain coming out of that. When I got divorced, I was elated, to be honest with you, because, my consciousness co-created something that was so painful and unpleasant and difficult. And it really takes recognizing who we were being, where we were at our frequency and our level of consciousness that drew that energy, that person to us, so that we could learn what we needed to learn to move forward. So I help people really appreciate the experience that they had, whether it was one of pure growth, a very unpleasant situation, or if it was something that had some beautiful moments, but just ended up not being the right fit. Or if somebody did cheat on them, it's not that they're a victim. There was something in consciousness, and a lot of people have a hard time hearing this, that attracted that kind of energy to them. And so being able to not make anybody wrong, if they were somebody who cheated on their partner, to not make them wrong, to really look at, well, so where was the wounding from your history that you carried with you to make up stories about yourself or beliefs about yourself that drew in this person? Bad news, yeah, you drew in this person. Good news is you get to learn, grow, evolve, and find somebody at a higher frequency that'll be a better match for you.
Right. Do you have any, I guess, how do you help people softly to kind of accept that? Because I remember I have a friend who came out of a bad marriage. It wasn't necessarily bad, but she felt really unhappy in it. And when I tried to have a conversation with her and just say, you may not feel this way, but I think, we all attract things that we all bring into our life, things that happen. That's kind of where she shut down, because she was not going to hear that. And I let it go. I didn't want to push it. But how do you, when you face that, how do you help people sort of put down the barrier, other than, that it really gives you power. If you have the power to create the bad things, then you have the power to create the good things. Yeah. But sometimes people are not ready to hear that.
They're not ready, so I meet them where they are. I start with where they are, so that we can start dissolving the pain energy and the heavy energy that they're experiencing. And I have some techniques that I use for that. It's like they get to vent, they get to share their story, they get to kind of marinate in their own meltdown. And then I'll start taking them through the releasing process, so they can let go of the heaviness of the emotion.
Right.
Still have the memory of what happened, but not feel as bad about it, let go of some of the stories that they've made up about themselves as a result, because a lot of times it just, the stories that people have, like I'm not enough and that kind of stuff, that came in before they met that person.
Mm-hmm.
That came in a long time ago. This person just was more evidence.
Right, right.
And so I try to help them understand that, clear some of the stories so that they're at their most authentic self. Then we can go in and look at, let's see what we created, because your story attracted this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happened. And it was the intention was healing.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are just not intended to be together forever. They're intended to grow and heal as a result of being together. And so if that was the case, once I can get down there, and I do like to start kind of where they are and just go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. And when they're ready, look what you attracted.
Mm-hmm.
Not as a judgment, but just as, hey, you had the power in this. Now you have the power to attract somebody more aligned with you.
Right. And I liked what.
Again,
Go ahead, finish.
I would say help them release, because we don't want them to continue to carry those
Mm-hmm.
same stories just to go back into the same, same thing, different person.
Right. So I liked what you said about when the relationship is over and they can, sometimes they part when not the relationship, when the contract is over. And because traditionally in our society, we have thought of a divorce as a really bad thing because you haven't carried that marriage through for 50 years.
Right.
But, the way that we're starting to see it now is that sometimes that wasn't even meant to be. So the divorce may not be an indication that you failed, but an indication that you succeeded in completing your task together.
Exactly.
And you can move on. Right.
Yeah, and I look at it that way, and I look at my own first marriage that way as well. It's like I completed my soul contract with that man, and I don't say that to be mean, that man,
Right.
but it was a huge opportunity for learning. I learned an incredible amount of wisdom about myself. And I really was able to take ownership for how I attracted that experience into my life. And it was so liberating to be able to do that, because it really showed me that I could shift who I was being, how I saw myself, what I believed, and attract somebody better,
Mm-hmm.
which I have. And so it is possible. I know it's hard. I know it's painful for people to look in that direction and say, oh my gosh, how did I attract this into my life? But if everything around us is a reflection of what's going on inside, that's where the real work is.
Right. Absolutely. So I want to talk to you about people that are not, they didn't get divorced, they didn't get cheated on necessarily, or they didn't leave the relationship. They're still in a relationship and they want to preserve it. And or perhaps, something is not going well. They want it to be good, but it's not really going that well. And it's sort of that place of the status quo, when some people feel that they cannot, or they should not really leave, or they should not end the relationship, but yet they are in a place, maybe they feel stuck, or they feel this is the best they can do, or this is the best there is, or there is no more time to start looking. And so status quo is this place of sometimes sort of stuckness. And I want to hear what you have to say about it, and then I'll probably share my personal experience with that and how I got unstuck, which was not really a pleasant experience, but I'll share.
They usually are, I like to call it flatlining, because, from my experience and all the training and all that kind of stuff, people really need to be mindful. They need to be mindful of their marriages. They need to be mindful of their relationships, because it's easy to get caught up, especially for, couples with kids. It's easy to get so focused on the kids that they forget about their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not mindful, if they're not having check-ins, how are we doing? If they're not visioning, what do we want to accomplish this year as a couple? If they're not getting vulnerable with each other, if they're not keeping the intimacy going, in all levels, not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually, if they're not, doing shared interest, activities together, and really having the intention to keep the marriage flowing, then it can get status quo, it can get stuck, it can flatline. So if I'm working with a couple and they've already flatlined, then I like to look under the hood of the car, so to speak. You can't fix an engine by having a car washed.
Right.
And a lot of people try to do it that way, but I want to flip up the hood and find out why they got stuck. What is it inside of the engine that went awry, that may be a part that needs to be replaced, or something that needs to be freshened up on the inside? Because it really is an internal thing, or it's like, oh, they got complacent, or again, they got too focused on the kids, especially those couples who are going into the empty nester phase, where it's like, they had 5 kids and then the last one left. Okay, so who are we now? Because they weren't nurturing their marriage throughout their child rearing years. So being mindful, nurturing the marriage are ways to, keep up with the evolution of them as in themselves as individuals as well as a couple. And if a couple comes in and they're flatlined, that's what we want to go in and do, is say, okay, so what's happened? What are you making it mean? What are you not doing that you used to do that did keep this marriage going strong? What are you committed to right now? Because some people kind of fall back on their commitment. Right. And that's a whole different kind of issue. So I want to know what they're really committed to having, and the level of depth that they want their relationship or marriage to be in. A lot of times what you were saying, status quo couples do love each other,
right.
But they're not intentionally growing. They're not being mindful. And it's like, I want to take them there to see what can be created. If something isn't going to be co-created, then they have a choice. They're either going to stay in this place or they're going to, part ways. But if they want to freshen things up and be more mindful and evolve more and get to know each other all over again, freshen things up, then so many things are possible. It could be, phase 2 of their relationship, and a really great phase, because now they're wiser.
Right.
They're a little older, a little wiser, and sometimes that, again, complacency and mindfulness.
Right. And so in my, so I'll share my experience, which was, I would say, a bit extreme. And I don't want to, well, I'll share it, but I was in a relationship in my marriage, and it wasn't for a long time, it wasn't really going in the direction that was healthy for either one of us. And I came to a point where I needed to make a decision, and that became an absolute turning point for me. I needed to commit to having a different experience within my relationship. And I remember the moment that I was making that commitment to myself and sort of declaring it. And I had to declare that I absolutely commit to a different experience within a relationship, no matter what that means. And I remember standing there and just sobbing, because I understood the implications of that. The implications were, it could mean that your relationship is going to be over. It could also mean that it would be beautiful, that it will, and I didn't want it to end, that it will really change and it will grow and will be beautiful, but there is an equal potential that it will end. And knowing those two, implications, and I think there is a myriad of other potentials out there, but those were like the two extremes that I was thinking about. It was very hard because it was having to still declare and say, yes, I'm committed to a different experience. And I believe that really started sort of the universe, the wheels turning, and things happening within about a year or year and a half. My husband passed away. And, well, the relationship was over. So it's not, I don't want viewers to be scared that if you commit to a better relationship, somebody will die. That certainly was an extreme, but in my case, it actually, I don't want to go into all the details, but it actually made sense. I understood why that happened. I didn't kill him. Was,
no,
yeah. But yeah, once you commit to that choice, I think, and again, the choice was not, I want to add the relationship, I want to have a better quality. But where that takes you is really sort of up to, the universe, I guess.
Up to the universe. It's like, I do believe couples have, choices often. If the soul contract is, it's like your husband may have had a soul contract only to be on this planet for a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. And regardless of what you had declared, this probably would have still happened,
Right.
But being committed to a whole different experience, like I'm always in the hope when I work with couples that both of them are that committed to having a different experience, not to make the other person wrong, but to say, right, we both take ownership of the fact that we've gotten into a status quo mm-hmm. situation. We love each other, but things are not like, not that everybody has to swing from a chandelier or anything like that, but we're not loving this marriage or this relationship. So how can we, help couples commit to both having a better quality relationship? It does take both of them. And, I've worked with, we'll say, one partner of the two who was totally committed to it, and then the other one wasn't. Mm-hmm. Even though that can make a very positive impact, it may not inspire the other one to shift.
Of course, yeah.
And it also may inspire the other one, where I've worked with a woman who, let's just say a woman comes in, and I'm thinking of somebody in particular, and then it inspired her husband to start working with me too. And then it became the his, hers, and ours sessions, which is what I like to do with couples. So they have individual time with me, because they may need to clear something that the other one doesn't need to be around for, their own wounding. And so when we're together as couples, we may work on some of the external, the way they're communicating, what is their come from when they're speaking to each other, what's their intention behind what they're saying, get into more depth together, but also to work with them as individuals so that they can clear some of their own stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking about clearing stuff and kind of, getting into different quality of a relationship, we talk about patterns and sort of relationship patterns, right? That we tend to get into similar relationship types or similar patterns if we don't do any sort of inner exploration and work on ourselves. Then even though we get together with different people, we may repeat similar experiences, and I have definitely experienced it in my life. Mm-hmm. So how do you work with that, or how do you help people?
If I had to say somebody who was single come to me and just say, once again, I met another guy who cheated, mm-hmm. I would, okay, so, and I'm talking about myself, because my first husband, that was like his MO, was mm-hmm. affairs. And I had been in relationships prior with men who would cheat. So that had been a pattern of mine. And I had to go, okay, so just like I would do with somebody else. It's like, so, okay, let's look at what you believe about yourself that has continued to bring that into your life. And for me, I didn't value myself enough. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't, I thought I just needed to sacrifice myself in order to have a man. That's what I learned. And so I want to help people unlearn those patterns so that they can have the different experience and really grow within themselves, clear out the cobwebs of limiting beliefs and things that they've been carrying with them since they were kids. Because that's when we get programmed, and I don't mean like we're in a cult or anything like that, but it's like, you know what I'm talking about, our families of origin, our early stages in school. Something happens, whether it's the dynamic between our parents, not having a parent, whether it's something that happens at school, our minds are so susceptible from birth through age 7. Almost we're in kind of a theta wave state, which has very susceptible, that we start making up stories about what happened. So an example was, my brother, who I adore, had a lot of ear, nose, and throat issues. And so he was often very ill. Well, guess who got all the attention?
You.
My brother.
Right.
And what happened to me in my life is I got Lyme disease.
Ah, okay.
And so, subconsciously, we're not always aware that this is something that, really affected us. I mean, I felt really bad for my brother, but, there was something inside of me that noticed he was getting all the attention. So, I had a few ailments, and then suddenly my parents were paying attention to me.
Right.
And then the Lyme came later when I noticed that men weren't paying as much attention to me in relationships. So, even though I'm not 100% cured, I'm certainly a whole lot better than I was. And sometimes once something becomes physical, it's really a challenge to get through it, but you keep working on it. And it's like, even though the patterns have changed, because I attracted an amazing husband for the past 16 years, who wouldn't dream of cheating. No, he knows I'd kick him out. No, I'm kidding. When you develop patterns, you learn. I really help women and men learn how to have better boundaries, learn what they were carrying with them, and have it make sense as to why they did draw in the person that they did, and to have that experience and to release the patterns so they never have to go through it again.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I usually extend the patterns to beyond even, or to before this life.
Yeah, and I am able to read a lot of that as well when I work with people, and able to see, well, there was a lifetime you had with this person where it was you were like royalty and he was a peasant or whatever. It's like
Right.
go in there and look at a little bit of where that soul contract came from, and a little bit of karma around that scenario. Because I believe these, whatever relationships and marriages we get into that work out or don't work out, we've been in that soul cluster before. We've been with that, that soul before, perhaps in different form, different gender, but something happened, and this is an opportunity to clear it.
Yeah, and in a way, I think it's healing, because people start looking for, what have I done in this life to deserve this kind of conversation, and often the answer is nothing.
Absolutely.
There are things, it makes sense why you have this if you look at a bigger picture, but you're just looking at one frame of a movie, and there are thousands of frames. So yeah, and people don't quite understand what they have done to deserve it, and that's not an empowering conversation or thought to have.
Conversation, a question at all, and it's so common for people to say, what did I do wrong? And my answer is nothing. And it's like, even if they did something that attracted something, it doesn't mean it was bad or wrong. It just was an opportunity to clear that pattern, to heal, to recognize, and to be done with it once and for all. Or it was a karma situation where karma was trying to be worked out. You know?
Right.
So
Okay.
I do like to look at it from that bigger picture,
Right.
because we're not born into a human experience as in a level playing field at all.
Mm-hmm.
Why do some people come in wealthy and some people come in some third world country with nothing?
Right.
It's so I do like to go there for people who are open to going there, and most of my
Mm-hmm.
clients are, because they know how I work, they know what I do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about love. And, before we can really learn to love others, we really have to learn to love ourselves. And I think that's where many of us are still learning to get that lesson, because it's not sort of it doesn't come naturally to us with our upbringing. So it took me probably 2 or 3 years to come to a point where I could just say, yeah, I love you and I accept you no matter what. I'm still in that process, but it's like,
we take our last breath, we work on this.
right. So yeah, can you talk about that, learning to self-love and to learning to self-acceptance, self-worth as kind of a building block to really
It is a building block, and it's like, a lot of times if somebody has been through a really rough experience, you're really starting, you kind of have to backpedal a little bit and look at the patterns of, their upbringing, and not from a place of a therapist where we're going to talk about this, analyze what happened when you were 3, but to really look at, what did you put in your bag of rocks, your big bag of rocks that you're carrying with you, where you look in the mirror and go, ugh, or you look at something that didn't quite work out for you, whether it's business or money or whatever, and just do this.
Right.
And it's really, you got to do this, and just have compassion. And I always have people look at the younger parts inside of them. If they had a daughter or son, would they be doing this to them? And it's like, I have people get present to something or somebody that just lights their heart up the minute I mention it, whether it's a pet, whether it's a family member, whether it's a child, and just say, would you ever say that person that you love the things that you say to yourself? And to really help presence, because I like doing inner child work. I do have a background in psychology, so I feel qualified enough to do it. And to just bring out that younger part inside. Just so either angry because they've been ignored for so long, or, so many bad things have been said by their older self to them, that younger part just needs to be treated with such love and such care. And that is a big step to that healing, to bring oneself into self-love. And it's really awkward at first.
Oh, absolutely.
Inner child out, and say, gosh, I love you. To look in the mirror and say, I love you. I have couple of techniques where it's like, it's about filling your own love cup. Can you allow yourself to love and approve of yourself? Just because you're alive and breathing.
Yeah.
And our culture does not help.
No. Right.
Messages that are received. If I see one more Victoria's Secret commercial, does not help women. Teenage girls. I used to teach high school. I just had such compassion for the stress that they felt they were under. Teenage boys, who they thought they had to be, not being able to emote. The cultural programming is really, really damaging. And this has not gotten better. I think there was a few years ago where the company Dove had commercials for women who looked like, all different shapes and sizes, who were considered beautiful. And I so respected that company for taking a stand. And I know Sports Illustrated has taken a stand and had what they call plus size women, you know, in their bathing suit, you know, edition or whatever, their swimsuit edition, and companies who recognize that women do not all come in a size 0, do not all look a particular way, same with men, because that is one of the programming, you know, pitfalls that our culture puts on us, is how we look.
Right.
You know, and then we suddenly decide, oh, I don't look the way the culture says I should look, therefore I'm not as much of value.
Right, right.
Or the accomplishment pressure. Oh, I have to have had a 4.6, you know, now they're doing that. The 4.6, yeah. Get into Stanford or an Ivy League school, get another 4 point whatever, and become, you know, this or that because my parents said that's how I was going to be loved or lovable.
Right. And it's interesting you bring that example. I have done a lot of work with young adults, college level adults, and when I work with them, I often meet this resistance to just accepting yourself. They don't know how to do that. They definitely measure themselves by all these, you know, I mean, we're trained to measure our worth by what others will tell us is acceptable. In childhood, that's the training ground, right? And I teach them the same technique. I do either parenting, that they are their own parent. Yep. How would a loving parent talk to you? Not a you know, scary parent, a loving parent. But often I find that being a friend is like, you are your own friend.
You are your own best friend.
Yeah.
And being able to spend time with yourself is really powerful. There are some people, like there's a couple that I'm working with right now. His wife is, you know, they're both very social, but his wife likes to go out with friends and be social and all that kind of stuff. He does not like to be alone, you know, even with their kids. So if she goes out, he's like, okay, where are you? Texting, where are you? When are you coming home? Who are you with? Who, you know, it's like, he just has a hard time. And it's heartbreaking that the worst thing that can happen to somebody is being in solitary confinement, because all you have is you, and they're not accustomed to really loving being with themselves. And so I may give somebody an assignment. I want you to spend an evening, or I want you to take yourself out on a date, you know, right? I want you to take yourself to dinner or whatever you want to go do, amusement park, but you're going to take yourself out because you're worth it.
And how do people react to that?
It's scary for a lot of people. You know, some people, I think some of my divorce clients can do that. You know, if they're like a second partner, have an easier time doing that than the ones who haven't been married at all. They tend to have an easier time with it. The married couples where I say, go spend a little time with yourself, it's kind of like, what? You know, aren't we supposed to be bonding more as I said, this is going to help you do that.
Right.
Because we can't hold our partner as our everything either.
Right. Right.
Because that person could end up dying, you know, earlier than we think. And then what do you got? If you don't really nurture yourself, have individual pursuits, make friends with yourself, love yourself, not only is it going to be hard for like a single to find a partner, but it's going to be hard to sustain a long-term relationship if you can't love yourself or you can't be with yourself, because you're going to get reflection from your external reality if you're not loving yourself.
Right. Yes.
Somebody's going to treat you like you're treating you. And that's no bueno, you know?
No.
That's not a good thing. So I like to take people into a self-discovery process. So whether married, whether they're single, so that they can really build that relationship with themselves. And then, you know, whether that's going to help them attract a partner or help them, you know, rebuild a marriage that may be status quo or maybe falling apart or on the brink of divorce. You know, I don't believe that every marriage should stay together. If a couple wants to stay together and they're 100% committed and they have pieces in place, they just don't know how to put the puzzle together, I will help them do that. If they decide that, no, this is really not going to work, but we gave it our best shot, then I will help them with a conscious exit strategy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that happens.
It does. It has happened before. And it's, you know, it's hard as a coach to watch that happen, but fortunately it hasn't happened a lot. But when it has happened, whether I'm working with one person or I'm working with both of them, it is so important, especially if there are kids involved, to make sure things are done in a conscious way, and that I work with them both on their story about it, their story about themselves, their feelings of failure, their anger at the other person, their anger at themselves, so that they can really exit with a cleaner slate. And if they're parents, they can co-parent well. If their kids are still, you know, needing that. Some people have grown kids, you know, so that's no longer really required. But, you know, being able to show up at your 25-year-old's wedding and be peaceful, or happy for your partner when they find somebody new, you know, that's really when you know that you healed. When you can be really happy for your former spouse when they have found the love of their life.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about love, you know, and you know, make it turn it in the happier direction. So do you think there is a change in the way we are perceiving love, our expectations about it as we are evolving? Yeah. Is there a shift in how we define love and how we think about it?
Yeah, I think it goes in a couple of different directions. I think on one hand, you have the movies and TV and commercials not helping. Like everyone then expects to have a Hallmark movie ending, you know, where the last 5 minutes they get together, you know, you knew it the whole time, you know, or, you know, movie sex or movie romance. It doesn't always work like that. And I think that kind of puts a damper on some of the expectations people have, because they don't know any different than what they've witnessed. You know, maybe they started watching soap operas when they were really young, or, you know, romantic comedies, and suddenly thought that that's what love is. Then there's the kind of love, I call it namaste love, where you can have love for somebody, but it's not romantic love. It's spiritual soul love, where you're just, you know, it's like, I love this person just as a being. I'm not interested in them romantically, but I love them as a being. I think that's one of the shifts that we've experienced, where people can have love for somebody who isn't their partner, who's never going to be their partner. And then there's the more evolved love where, you know, and I love Gary Zukav so much, he calls it spiritual partnership. And it's really coming together in a romantic way, number one, for the sake of loving, for the sake of healing. You know, loving for the sake of growing and evolving together as souls in the human experience. And certainly, I think people who are on, you know, discovering more of a spiritual, not a religious per se or faith-based, but more of a spiritual path, is more mainstream than it used to be. And I think it really helps people get into the level of soul-centered love. You know, that deep sacred love that I was talking about earlier. And I think that's a shift that is really helping. That's the consciousness shift, the consciousness activation that you're talking about. I believe that is happening. But on the other end of the spectrum, you know, some of the media kills a lot still at the same time. Hopefully more people will continue to evolve as consciousness activation and consciousness exploration becomes more mainstream, as it, you know, has.
Right. So related to that, has dating shifted, or has it? You know, what is there a difference?
Well, yeah, there's technology now. You know, that they're not, you know, when I was, you know, dating, there was no technology, and I believe that if you really align your consciousness with the vision you have, you're just going to run smack dab into the person who is to be your partner. If you feel a calling inside, if you're in touch with your intuition that says go on match.com, go on match.com, then likely there's going to be somebody important there for you. So I think the attraction, who we're attracting into our dating world, is definitely the first step. Being on a date, I think it's, it's like they say that, oh, women can really initiate now and pay and all this kind of stuff. Women don't want to pay. There's still a reality of biology. Men, there's still a concept, biologically speaking, that a man really does want to, provide in a way or take the woman out. And there is still an expectation that that's going to happen unless they're meeting for coffee. I always encourage people who are online dating and they're, they've gone from the Wink or whatever the online dating site has to the email, to the phone call, to the coffee date, so to speak. And the coffee date is a great way to not spend a lot of time with the person, but to just get a feeling and a vibe of who they are, and then decide, do I want to get to know this person or not? And then that would lead to the dinner date or, that kind of stuff. So I think dating, because it's become more online focused, has a particular flow to it in that world, but it really goes back to consciousness. I know some people who hate online dating. They think it's a chore. They think it's work, where some people are like, this is a candy store. I'm trying to find, my secret bar kind of thing. And they love it. I know people who have met and gotten married from meeting online, but their consciousness was ready to meet the person. And so I always go back to that, no matter what somebody does in the dating process to meet somebody or even being on the date, if their consciousness is aligned, it's going to go well.
So I want to talk about that. When you talk about aligning consciousness and really being clear that will sort of really, I believe, will magnetize that reality to you. Can you help our viewers understand that better? What can be done to really, what needs to be done to bring on that clarity?
Yeah, first of all, we, as I mentioned before, we need to release and identify. Sometimes we don't even have to identify. We just need to know there's an owie inside, so to speak, right? There's something that hurts. And sometimes if we're doing our negative self-talk, oh, I just can't do, I'm a failure, I'm a this, I'm a that. That's not alignment. That's self-beat up. That's self-talk. If we can get ourselves cleared from most of that so that we're saying, you know what, girl, you're awesome. You're amazing. I love you. Yes, I'm relationship ready. I've got great boundaries. I know my criteria. I know my core values. I know my deal breakers. I know what I bring to the table, and I'm very confident of what I have to give and who I get to be in a relationship. I think there are a lot of people who spend so much time with their criteria, and that's important, that they forget about who are they going to be, what are they bringing to the table. Because I've worked with women who it's like, I want this, and I want them to be this, and I want them to be that, and I want them to be that, and it's like, well, what are you bringing?
Right.
So they have to have that level of confidence in who they are, who they're being, a level of self-love that's going to be really appealing. And then it's really just a matter of attracting somebody that you just can connect with on a level you can't explain. Because when you have that connection, that soul connection, it's very hard to explain it in words, because it just is.
Right.
It's like you can talk till 4 a.m. You have so much in common. You've got these shared interests, these passions that are very similar. You are speaking the same language, so to speak, in terms of, spirituality, or your nature lovers, or something that is a deep interest for both of you that just creates this beautiful synergy together. And it's very unexplainable when it happens. So somebody says, so why did you pick so-and-so to be your spouse? I can't explain it. There was just this thing.
Right.
Because often when we align our consciousness, we do meet somebody and it's just, there's just a thing. There's a draw to each other.
Right.
We can't explain because it's at a soul level.
Now, do you find that when people go through that process and they sort of align and they feel that self-confidence and clarity, that synchronicity starts kicking in and things just kind of, you're stepping from stone to stone and things start coming together? Have you had those experiences?
Very much so. And it's like sometimes they may have to go through a couple of other, people before they get, but they're I call it an upgrade. They've upgraded, right? Because they're upgrading on the inside. So they're attracting more people who have more alignment with them, who have more possibility, but there may still be one little thing missing. There may be a couple things missing, but they had a better experience. That's progress. That's when they know that something inside is shifting. And certainly, my experience was, I had this, marriage that, I co-created that was a disaster, came out of that going, okay, I was the common denominator with all these cheating guys. What do I need to do for myself to have that never happen again so that I can find, somebody that is great. And so I did go through a couple of other guys before, before I met my husband. I had a short-term dating experience with somebody that when I was a school teacher, 2 students set me up with somebody, very sweet, but he was not the right person. And I was like, okay, I still have some work to do. And so, I made it a point to do the work. And then I was in a 2.5-year relationship where we actually got engaged, but there was something not quite right for both of us. We were 2 really good people who liked each other a lot. We're still friends to this day because it was an amicable, yeah, this isn't quite it for us, but you're a really good person and let's be friends. And I was very lucky that that happened because it doesn't always go that smoothly when you go through a breakup.
Right.
The relationship had its really great moments and it had its moments where it was really clear that we weren't the right match, but I was trying to make it be that way, convince, and I know a lot of people get into the pattern of convincing, and that was one of the last patterns I released, kind of going, I don't have to convince anybody of anything. Why should I convince somebody to love me? And so, it's like, what, why? It's like, if I really love myself and value myself, I don't have to convince anybody of anything. They're just going to be attracted to me as I am. And after that relationship, I went to grad school because I was really interested. Actually, I was going to be a therapist at school. And then this whole coaching thing came about. I was like, well, that looks really fascinating. But I met my husband in grad school. And we had so much in common and we became study buddies and friends. And then it led to more. And, it was just, we just knew. There was knowing. And we were both ready. We had both been divorced. We had both been working on ourselves. And, it just right time, right person. And it's been, we eloped. We didn't want to, both of us had been married. We weren't going to pay for another wedding. So it wasn't about the wedding. And I know so many people where it's like, the bridezillas and they have to have the fawns and the doves and the ice sculptures. It's like, it's not about the wedding. Like, have a nice wedding, but it's about the marriage.
Absolutely.
And I see just, so many couples who get married with this fancy wedding and then 2 years later they're getting divorced. They weren't paying attention to their relationship. They were just, I'm getting married. And our culture really emphasizes that, and relatives, when are you going to get married? That kind of stuff. So there people feel a lot of pressure. So when that happens, they're less evaluating themselves and the person they're with and more about, okay, does he have this? Okay, that's good enough. Let's get married.
Yeah.
And I got out of that pattern. So, I also believe that people need to earn each other. Where it's like, not that, prove to me that you're, not like that, but they have to demonstrate a level of character. both people, not just men, but women and men who feel worthy and deserving of real deep soul love will make sure that somebody treats them right. And that's what I mean by being earned.
Mm-hmm.
Because you deserve to be treated well. You deserve to have the person that you want, the life that you want, the love that you want. And if you don't believe it, you're not going to get it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, as you look forward, we, in these conversations, we talk about the potential of humanity as we are evolving, right? So in terms of love, relationships, what's our potential? Where are we heading? What do you see as us? What kind of relationships do you see us having?
I thought you were going to ask about politics, and I was going to be like, oh my
No.
I think we are evolving into more soul-centered love relationships, more conscious, more awareness, more of working on self to attract and thrive in a long-term partnership, more consciousness to use the opportunity not just to have the wonderful fun things that great marriages have, but also to see how we can grow and heal together with ourselves as people and be a support person for that other person to heal their own wounds and stop projecting all that stuff onto each other. I think we are really evolving into more conscious, new thoughts, spiritual, mindful, loving relationships.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the hope that I have, and I work with all types of couples, including polyamorous couples. And because I'm not here to judge. And, their parameters are different, but it works for them because they're in mutuality about it.
Right. Absolutely.
If a couple is in mutuality about anything, then whatever they choose to do and be as a couple is going to work. As long as they adhere to the boundaries, as long as they adhere to what they're creating in mutuality. And I believe that every relationship that is successful has to have mutuality and harmony, because somebody being swearing at their spouse or hitting on their spouse or doing something really cruel is not going to forward anything. But I don't think that overall that is the direction that we are heading. I think it's a slow process. I think we're heading into more soul-centered partnerships.
I hope so. It sounds wonderful. So Susan, as we're wrapping up, would you like to tell our viewers what you're up to these days? Your website address will be in the email, but what they can find and what kind of work they can do with you.
Absolutely. It's like what I'm up to right now certainly is helping individual, singles find the great love of their life through some of the things that we were talking about, helping couples thrive in marriage. And, a lot of the people that I work with, the angle that I take often is people who have been betrayed, whether it's financially, whether it's somebody, dated them for 6 months and then ghosted them, whether somebody cheated on them. Most people have been betrayed or felt betrayed by a romantic partnership. And even couples who have been through infidelity, I really specialize in helping them overcome that. And if couples want to rebuild their marriages, I'm happy to help them do it, and I have. If couples want to part ways and heal themselves, I have a program coming up for women thriving after infidelity, and getting clarity as to whether they want to put their marriage back together or not. I don't advise people running off to divorce right away, as tempting as that is, but to just be with it, to be able to identify how they attracted it. And that is so hard to do, but that is the work that needs to be done in order for them to grow in self-love, self-confidence, get their, I call it their mojo back, their groove back, feel attractive and lovable again, which likely they didn't feel prior to being betrayed. So I do work with all types of relationship issues, but I do specialize in working with people who have, whether they're single or in partnership, who have been betrayed, felt betrayed, and are really afraid to move forward.
Oh, wow, and that's really important
It is.
to help, to help people kind of recover and move forward.
Definitely.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and I hope it inspired people to just love and find love and make it better.
And I have a free gift that they can find, I'm sure, on what you're sending. They're going to get a free, what I call an e-course on relationships, and they can choose the one for singles, they can choose the one for couples. And it talks about a lot of what we talked about and how they can apply that to their lives.
Wonderful.
So
yeah, I hope everybody goes and checks it out.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I love the topic. I love what you're up to, because I'm such a firm believer in consciousness and evolution of consciousness and soul-centered partnership. And like you said, looking at the bigger picture of things. And that's really the work that I do. So I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.